from Simone de Gijt from Open Value, and she will tell us everything about 2 plugins, but I will not spoil anything. She will mention it herself. Have a good talk. Enjoy.
Nice. Thank you. Well, I'm very glad and excited to be here. So thank you guys for joining. To be in front of a real crowd is amazing after such a long time. But even though you guys are here, we actually got something really great out of COVID, namely that we have now this totally hybrid situation where we also have people at home. So hi, people at home. Nice of you to join. Thank you. It might be that you thought, okay, there's finally a meetup. I just sign in for the drinks afterwards. I get that. But so for those people, I will shortly present or tell you a little bit about what I'm going to talk about tonight. I will talk about some Kotlin plugins. So what is Kotlin? Well, Kotlin is a relatively new language, which looks a lot like Java. And that makes quite a lot of sense because that JVM version of Kotlin standard library is built on top of the Java class library. So the presentation is called Plugin and Play, and playing we will do. All right. Well, first of all, in 2016, my buddy Ktlint and I started working together in IT. Great start. Kotlin was released in 2016, the first version, and had mostly in mind to help with the integration of backend with Android apps. And they actually got very much celebrated over that, so much that even in 2019, Google announced that Kotlin was a preferred language to use for Android apps. So good job. And then in 2021, the highlights, I started working at Open Value. Look at me, so happy signing my contract. Still am, though, very important to mention. Still am. And I also started working on a project with Quinn, and they work with Kotlin. So here I am. So what are we going to talk about tonight? We are going to talk about 2 plugins. The first one being Kover, which is a plugin for code coverage. I will explain a little bit about it. What are the advantages, disadvantages, give a short demo. And then we do pretty much the same for kitty-lint. So it's a linter, but like, as you can see, it's kind of the same index. But before we start, we first go over this little organizational thing. Tonight we have 2 ways to ask questions. First of all, the old well-known way of doing it by hand raising. Yeah. But for everybody with an injury or the people who just like to, they can scan the QR code or go directly to menti.com and get their voting link, enter the voting link. You will see there, if you enter it, you will probably already see a QA page, which says that you can enter a question or place a comment about the topic of Kover. You can also, you will see if people answer something or enter something in it, you will see those questions or comments as well. You can rate them if you feel the same, or if you have the same question, you can give a thumb up. And then like, I at least know like how many people of you guys feel the same way. I will though go over this whole QA thing at the end of every block. So if you have a very urgent question and you want to say something in the middle and don't want to wait for the end, then please use the hand raising technique. All right, amazing, let's start. Well, we're going to start with Kover. So what is Kover? Well, Laszlo Kover is a Hungarian politician, and he's also the current national speaker of the Assembly of Hungary. But we're not going to talk about him. It's also pronounced the same way as the Dutch word for suitcase. So we could talk tonight about a koffer, which is a suitcase, but again, like, not really going to do that. We are going to talk about the Gradle plugin for Kotlin code coverage agents, Jacoco and IntelliJ. So what is code coverage? I hope that when you're here or at home and you're a developer, that you know what code coverage is. If you don't, or don't let your boss know, or if you are very good and never make a bug or a mistake, please come to me after this talk. I would very much like to speak to you. What is your secret? All right, so code coverage is quite easy, right? It's just a way of verifying how much code has been reached by your tests. Those can be unit tests, integration tests, mutation tests, etc. Yeah, red stating that you didn't hit any of that code, green stating that you did hit the code, yellow stating that you hit some scenarios, but not all. So what kind of options do we have when we talk about code coverage? Well, maybe the most known is Jacoco, or at least for Java and Kotlin developers. It's an existing tool, it's very much known, widely recognized format, but it has some quirks when we're talking about Kotlin. So let's look at this class. It's a very dummy-based class, so bear with me. But we see here 3 functions, one of them being a standard greet, which just returns hello peeps. Then we have a greet function where you can take an input parameter and then say hello something. And we have an inline function that is called getWorld. So what do you think would happen if I would execute this test? Which lines would be hit? Does anyone know? Based on Java, it shouldn't be too difficult, right? Yeah, getWorld. And of course, yeah, and the greet function. Because we go to greet, but as an input parameter, we take that inline function, getWorld. That is correct. So we would expect those two to be green, right? But if we execute Jacoco, we actually see here in the bottom that getWorld has a coverage of 0. It has not been hit, even though the test did actually succeed and the assertion was true. So how can that be? That is because Jacoco cannot handle inline functions, which are very Kotlin oriented. Right? So we do need a solution for stuff like that. Another thing you maybe see is that where we saw on the previous slide, this really nice picture with like a class and lines and stuff, we now only get a list of method functions and you cannot really like visualize it where it is in the code. That is because I'm using in this project, I am using a Kotlin directory structure. And a Kotlin directory structure actually means that you define your group on the build Gradle. So you say, for example, so all my packages start with org.example, and then you don't need to define that in your package, actually. You just state that in the build Gradle, and then you leave it out of the directory structure. But Jacoco cannot handle that. So what other options do we have? We have IntelliJ, which actually handles Kotlin pretty well, but it is an tool only used for IntelliJ. So if you use Eclipse, you're already screwed. But if you want to use it anywhere outside of your IntelliJ, also a no-no. It doesn't generate a report, and well, it's just like we need something else. Of course, we need Kover. So what are the advantages of Kover? Well, first of all, it's provided by JetBrains, which is just really nice because it's professional. You will know that they take the time and the effort to develop it. Next to that, it's fully integrated with the Gradle toolchain and multi-platform projects. It generates XML and HTML files. Kotlin, the Kotlin Android support is there as well, and you don't need to divide into build types and flavors. Next to that, and I actually like that, it has customizable filters for instrumented classes. So instrumented classes are the classes that if you compile your code, then the instrumented classes will manipulate or add something to that bytecode before starting the application. For a lot of code coverage agents, it's very hard to grasp or test that kind of classes. But with Kover, you can actually do that. And of course, it handles Kotlin features very well. So now that I pitched this perfect picture, do we have any disadvantages? Unfortunately, we have. It is quite in an experimental stage. So it has been released from Kotlin 1.6, which was the end of last year. So it's very much in a child's phase still. So it has some child diseases as well. You can only use it with Gradle from 6.4 on. So and Kover is built upon the Jacoco or the IntelliJ code coverage agents. So if you use Jacoco, then you can still not see that class file, what I just talked about on the other slide. You will still see the method functions. If you, however, would use it with the default IntelliJ, which is already the default by Kover, then you will get the nice class picture with the red and green lines and stuff. And something I personally find maybe the most sad is the fact that the verification is at the moment only on line level. So if you want to have verification on branch level, you cannot do that. JetBrains has already committed to the fact that they want to integrate that feature. They will release it, but they didn't mention a release. So we need to wait until that happens. All right, then let's give you guys a short demo. For the people at home, if you want, you can go to this GitHub site. You will see the same project that I am going to open. If not, just bear with me. All right, let's go there. All right, so we have a project over here, and I grayed out, as you might see, the Jacoco plugin, because normally underneath our plugins, we will find the Jacoco plugin. But for now, we are not going to do that. So I grayed that one out, and I integrated Kover as a plugin. At this moment, when I will run this, the report, no other configuration is in place. Only the plugin will do its work. And we have a class, as I showed before. It's the same class as with, oh, it needs to be a little bit bigger. Yes, it's the same class as we saw before in the picture. All right, I have some tests. I have the test that you also just saw. So the is equal to, and I also have an integration test over here, which goes via the controller. And the controller actually only goes to the standard function. So as you can see, it only goes to the standard greet. All right. Okay, then let's give it a try. Let's just do a build. Let's see what comes out of there. So what is Kotlin if we don't, what is Kover when we don't configure it at all? So it needs some time because of the integration test, right? It needs to spin up the application. A little bit sad, but we'll get there. All right, has been done. And we will get here underneath our build reports Kover. We will find the index and we will open it in Safari. Then I need to get out of this big screen. Otherwise we will not see it. Yes, all right. So here we have our two package structures. I will go to greeting and to service. And there you can see that the inline function now, in comparison to Jacoco, is indeed green. So it did now recognize that inline function and it did take it into account, which is very nice. Another thing that you might notice, which is quite funny, is the fact that we see some task classes over here. That's kind of weird, right? We don't need any coverage over our task classes. So why is it there? Well, this is one of the child diseases that is still within Kover. Kover sees automatically all the test sources. So if you have, like I have, a different source folder for iTest, let's get that a little bit down. Here you have iTest. I have a different source folder for that. It will recognize that and it will take those tests into account. But on the same hand, it doesn't recognize it as being the test source folder. So it also handles it like it's main. So it's executed, but it's also being taken into account for the coverage. But we can do something about it. We have, luckily, we have some configuration that we can do. So let's slide a little bit down. I first want to mention very briefly a little bit about this, because I have the feeling that in most websites, this configuration is mentioned, but I'm personally not so happy about it. So that's why I want to give a mention about it. So this configuration is underneath tasks and then with type test, and it's in the with type test. But why am I not really liking it? When I would include or exclude it, it excludes it as code coverage, but the file is still in the report. But instead of the percentage being 50, it drops to 25 because the half of the file is not taken into account. So yeah, not really a fan of that. Then we also have the binary report file set, but there's actually a bug on it. So that doesn't work as expected as well at the moment. So personally, I would recommend leave this. You don't need it. I think I don't need it. But do please use the cover HTML report. So this is a pretty nice configuration setting, which has also the include and the exclude, but now it will take into account, it will also remove those classes really from your report. So let's first do a clean, because otherwise it will still be there. And then let's run cover report. And I'm now just running the cover report because the cover HTML report, oh, I didn't Gradle update it. Okay, never mind. Right. Yeah, you can quit. Yes, thank you. All right. Very briefly updating it, otherwise we don't get anything out of there for sure. All right, great. Let's try it again. All right. It's giving me some issues about the inline function that I'm using, because it's, as you could see, very, very dummy. So it doesn't do purpose. As you can see now, the task classes have disappeared. I also excluded the application files that were in here before. So now we have a clean report file, which we can actually use. If you want to also have this included, this specific configuration included when you run builds, you should also add it to your check. And you should, if you need to add one little setting over here, which is generate report on check is false, because this cover merge report actually doesn't take into account the configuration at the moment. So if it's true, which it is by default, it will reset your settings, which is not nice because you set it for a reason, right? So let's not do the builds. Trust me on that, this will generate it in the build file as well. All right, then we get to the configuration of the verification. As I mentioned before, we only have verification on line level. There are, though, you can, in line level, you can, of course, differentiate a little bit. So you can have line coverage, just percentage overall. You can have line amount, stuff, but it all includes line coverage. The branch coverage, as I mentioned before, will hopefully be released in a later release. Then we have some generic settings which we can do. So as I mentioned, instrumented classes are by default enabled. They can be taken into account. If you don't want to have instrumented classes be included in your test classes, you do need to disable it. So that is is disabled as false. Then, as a default, IntelliJ is used. If you want to change that to Jacoco, you most certainly can. As you can see, it's over here. Do though remember that when you're using the director directory Kotlin structure, that you will not get that nice report as we saw before. But if you don't really mind the Kotlin directory structure, you of course can. If you would use a multi-module project, so a project with multiple modules, you can disable some of them by just typing in the name of that module. Oh, no. So you can just enter the module name, like in this example, project name, but doesn't really matter, then it's just not taken into account. You have to instrument Android packages and run all tasks for a project task, which is about if you have that same multi-module project and you want to run all the tasks for all the modules, you can enable this and you don't need to like execute it for each module. All right, that was pretty much it for Kover. So I'm very excited to see if anyone, whoo, nice. Do you use Lover at Quinn? No, I don't. And I actually don't know what it is. How bad is that? I'm not sure if anyone...
I meant Kover.
Oh, yeah. Nice. We don't use Lover, but... No, we use Kover in some projects. But as I mentioned, in our pipelines, we have the rule that we validate based on branch coverage. And therefore, we did play around with it a lot, but we are not using it in a lot of projects. Yeah. Right. Are there any other questions just from the audience? Because we're moving on after this. So if you have any Kover questions from home. Oh, yes.
Actually, really basic. What is branch?
Oh, nice. Thank you. Thank you for your question. The question was said here, what is branch coverage? So branch coverage is if you have a line with multiple scenarios, like an if statement, you can have there 2, 3, X amount of scenarios, then that one of those scenarios is a branch. So branch coverage is the amount of scenarios, the amount of branches that you have reached in that single line. Great question. Thank you. Any other? No? All right. I hope everybody's still on board. Okay, great. Then we move on. Oh, before I move on, I need to, of course, change my question to the next slide. Ktlint. All right. So people want to say anything about Ktlint, now they can. So yeah, let's talk about Ktlint, also pronounced as kitty-lint for all our cat lovers. Unlike the picture, it is not a clean up thing for cat. It is, as Pinterest mentioned it's an anti-bike shedding Kotlin linter with and built-in formatter. So let's start with the basics. What is a linter? Well, a linter is a tool that analyzes your code based on a set of code rules. So for example, if we look at the picture, the video, we already see some red lines popping up. That is because a code style base has said that the indentation is wrong, the order of my imports are wrong, I should use a space over there. And a linter is a tool that actually sees that notice, okay, hey, you did something wrong there. So as you can see, I now hover over it. This is the linter saying me, hey, you did wrong. And then a formatter is actually a tool that will correct it for you. So perfect. Well, we all want to have that, right? Because yes. Because why? It saves time. Because we don't want to go over our code and correct all the commas and all the indentations and stuff and the imports. Therefore, it saves energy and therefore it simplifies the process. With other words, it's a great success. All right, what are our plugin options then? Well, I think the biggest one is Pinterest. It's a static code analysis tool that is used for Kotlin code, and it actually uses the official Kotlin code style rules, which is super nice because that is Like if you want to have a generic setup style, that's the one to go to when you're using Kotlin. And there are a lot of options. You can, like, it's there. Search it for it if you want to use that. So why do we want to have anything else if we already have a great tool like that? Well, GLLightShoe is a Gradle wrapper, which actually provides you very nice tasks for your Gradle project. So you can combine that with your build or verify stuff beforehand. It's compatible as well with the Kotlin plugin, so very nice. The same thing you also have for Maven, Gensign, but we're not really going to talk about that because Kotlin, Maven, so just go to Gradle. But if you are using Maven, go check it out. Gensign might be something for you. So a little bit of numbers here. As you can see, Pinterest is by far the biggest one. It has 76 releases, 102 people working on it, and it was released a month ago. If you can see that in comparison to GLLightShoe, it's very much, it's very less, but that is mainly because they handle in bigger releases. It's not that they don't work actively on it. They actually have 40 contributors, but they just choose to do it in bigger releases. And then we have Gensign, which has only 5 contributors, but 53 releases, and the last release was last week. So pretty up to date, I would say. So the demo is now, but this is like you are not seeing any disadvantages for like the very accurate looker, and that is mainly because I don't really see any disadvantages. I really like Ktlint, and at the moment I don't really have them. If you have them, place them on the Q&A. I'm very curious to know. So let's go for a demo. Again, if you want to use, go to GitHub, you can. For the rest, I will open it again in my IntelliJ. And over here, we have Ktlint. I have the same project just to cover out Ktlint in. So it has the same structure. Only I removed the iTest because the build will just be quicker without the iTests. So Ktlint, it's a linter, as I mentioned before. When we go to the controller, and we will mess up here a little bit like I did in the previous example. Like this. I already got 2 mistakes, right? But doesn't mention anything at the moment. Let's see when I build it, what happens. It just starting my Gradle daemon. And yeah, there you go. It already fills. So it will give me the output on which lines were actually failing. I have 2 ways to correct that. I can do that via the Gradle task, Ktlint format, and then it will pop it right back. But I can, of course, also, let's put it back. I can also use Option Command L, and then it will also, like that's for the Mac users. For the Windows user, I don't know. But probably you have a short key for that as well. But we saw just before we saw the red lines, right? And we really like red lines because it's visible. We want to have that. So to integrate that, we actually need to have a plugin. This plugin is the unofficial Ktlint plugin, but it works very well. It's from Nick Badal. And you can add it to your project, and then you do need to enable it underneath tools. Here we'll find it again, and there you need to enable it, apply, okay. And if we now wait for a second, then I'm very much hoping that it will give me some red lines. Why are you not doing anything, Ktlint? Yeah, I just needed to have a little bit more patience. All right, there we go. It now has red lines, which is really nice. One trick I wanted to show you as well, like if you just don't care about seeing any errors, you have the option to go to action on save and just say, okay, just reformat the code and optimize the imports on my save. And then when I save it, boom, it gets back. For this demo purposes, I will now disable them again because otherwise I cannot show anything because it's reformatted every time. So I'm applying this. There is also another option which I quite like. We can add hooks with kitty-lint to our Git commits. So let's do that. We go to our command line and we say we want to have, let me see, all right. Let me see. Okay. I'm not sure I forgot what it was. Where I do, oh, here I have to, okay, it's starting with that. All right. Add. First to check, let's check the check. So I now add this pre-commit hook on my Git commit. And if I would now add, git add everything and then git commit. Let's do a YOLO because we only live once. Then we will see that it failed. It's failing because of those errors that are there. Important to notice, this is only a check. So it's checking your code and after that it will just commit it. So if you want to fix that before you push it, you do need an extra commit. You need to now go to your IntelliJ, fix the errors, make another commit and then push it. But it's quite nice because you already know it before it's in GitLab and before you get like the errors over there. Another thing you can add is almost the same thing, but then with a formatter. So it's quite little, right? Not sure. I don't think I can expand the command line. It says add Ktlint format git pre-commit hook. And now it's a formatter. So if I would add that, all right, I need some new changes because I already committed my last changes. So let's do it like this. Git commit YOLO. Yes, great, do it. Now it actually committed it without any errors. And if we get back, it has been fixed for me. So if you do this, it's quite nice, but you don't know anything. You don't get a mention about any format issues you had. It just fixes it for you. Depends on if you like that or not. All right. Okay. Next, we have a little bit of configuration. Not a lot. Or yeah, quite a lot, but it's quite easy, all of them. It's not very complicated. So as I mentioned, the kitty-lint is just a wrapper over the big Pinterest version, right? So here you can set the version of Pinterest. I can make this a little bit bigger. That would be nice. Right. So if Lightshoe, as I said, it doesn't use a lot of releases. So if you want to upgrade or downgrade it, you can via this way. You can put it on debug or verbose. And there are some Android settings. You can also just ignore all failures. Might be nice. No, I don't recommend that, but you can do it. You can also disable rules. So how do you, and you enter that by the string name of the rule. So how do you know which rules are there and what is the naming of those rules? You go to the Pinterest project, not the kitty-lint. You go to the Pinterest project and there you will find a list of all the namings and the meaning of those rules. One of those namings is indent. We can all guess what that will do, right? So it will notify you about indentation errors. If I put indent over here, it will not be taken into account anymore. Pinterest is also working quite a lot on experimental rules, updating their rules. You can apply them, but then you just get a whole package of experimental rules. If you want to disable some of them, you need to do that again via this disable set rule. You cannot apply just one of the experimental rule. By default, Ktlint doesn't have a report. Most of the time, you don't really need it. But if you want to have it for some sort of reason outside of your IntelliJ, of your IDE, it might be nice to have a report. So you need to add that yourself with another dependency. Pinterest does provide you with an HTML one, so you can add that to your project. If you want to have it in a different format, there are quite a lot of reporters in different formats around. Just Google for them, you will probably find them. Then we can include different source paths. So if you want to have it for more than only your modules, then you can add it like this. And you can also filter it. So by default, it will just go over everything within your source folder. So also the task classes will be taken into account. If you feel you don't need a linter for your task classes, you can disable it via this way. And the last thing I want to mention is, let's say you get a very big project of one of your colleagues and you take over responsibilities and he never uses a linter. It's full of mistakes. You don't want to fix it all at once. You have this option to create a baseline. Let me see. It's over here. I can do it in the command line. It will be. Oh, that didn't work out. Let me see. Create baseline. I'm not seeing it. It is most definitely here. Yeah, here, kitty-lint generate baseline. And then you will get a different folder, which is called config. And over there, you will find an XML file with all your errors. At this moment, we don't have errors, but otherwise you will just get the errors that are not taken into account. So that's pretty much it. You can, that might be interested. I'm not sure how late we live. What time is it? Can we still, do we have some time? All right, great. All right, so what might be nice is you can also add custom rules to your rule set. So if your company just feels they should have an exclamation mark after every variable name, it's very weird. But like if they want to have it, you can add a rule for that. You do need, I have here a separate project. You do need to create a separate module within your project where you want to use that. So in this case, custom rule set. And within that separate module, you will find a custom rule. You need to add a custom rule set provider that takes the rule set provider of Pinterest. And then you can just add your custom rules to it. You also need in resources this meta-inf file, and then you're good to go. All right. Sorry, can you repeat? Yeah. Yeah, so that's a good question. So the question was said here, if you have your custom rule, will IntelliJ then also, or Pinterest, be able to format those as well? So fix them for you. I'm not sure if they can, because like in this example, it's a no var rule. And I only state that I don't want to have var, but I don't state what I do want to have.
You want like space step.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like I should dive into that. But I guess if you also state what it should be, then it should be fine. But I didn't look into that too much. Thank you, though. Good question. Let me see. Oh yeah, let's get out of full focus. Then we get to the next question. We're with Ktlint. I marked that as answered. All right. For Morgan. Nice. Love it. Thank you for that. I will give great. So the question is, can you compare Ktlint with Detect? No, I can't. Is Detect also specifically for Kover, for Kotlin?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, we use Detect as a Detect code analysis, and then we use it to, find
to detect stuff. Hey. All right. All right. No, I don't really know. Do you see any difference?
I see some languages, so I was
okay.
Watch things over Detect.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to look into those two things. Great. Cool. So for now, you need to hold on tight. Can you compare kitty-lint with SonarLint? Yeah, so SonarLint works indeed in quite a similar way, but I feel SonarLint is very Java based. I'm not sure if it's very Kotlin oriented. I always used it in my Java projects. And I think with Kotlin, with Pinterest, which is like the original source project, right? It really follows the Kotlin official style guides. And I don't think SonarLint will do that. But I don't know. I didn't read about that, but that's just my experience from the past and from what I know of kitty-lint. So I think that's mainly it. All right, Mark hasn't read. Can we override existing rules in kitty-lint? Well, it is an open source project, so you can get the project and do everything yourself, but you can only disable it by the way I just described. And then if you don't want that rule and you want to override it, you disable the Pinterest one, and then you just write your custom one. And you can use the code of the open source Pinterest project. So you can pretty much copy paste a lot of what's going on there and tweak it to your liking. All right. Any questions on the people from the people at home that are not using Mentimeter?
Nope.
No. All right. So lovely cat. Yes, we did do this. Thank you. All right. These are the sources I used. Yeah. They're also the projects are in here, so that might be nice. I will share the slide desk on Twitter and LinkedIn after, so you can check it out for yourself. Are there any other questions? No? All right, cool. Then I want to thank you very much. Would love to stay in touch. So if you want, follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn. And before, I see already Roy standing up, before you go in, if you want, this is my very first tech talk. I will do this presentation again. If you have some feedback or suggestions for me, really much appreciated. If not, also fine. Thank you for listening, and thanks.
Thanks, Simone. Thank you.
Should I take the laptop?
No, you can stay there. So thank you, Simone. Really awesome. Learned something again.